Today we're going to review a film. We're only about 4 years late, but it's okay. This is a film that came out in 2014. It's called The Grand Budapest Hotel. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the director first and how it fits into his body of work so that we can kind of figure out how this thing came into existence. Wes Anderson is probably in the top 5 directors of his generation, if I had to rate him personally. He's somewhere between 40 and 50, I think, just to give you an idea of how old he is. He's been working with a lot of the same actors, actresses, and the creative staff that he's used on his films for over 10 years, probably 15 years. It says something about you as an individual if you can work with the same group of people over that long a period of time and continue to produce high quality artistic output. What it says to me is that he has rejected the Hollywood system, which relies on producers as being the main driver. The producers hire a director, they hire writers, they hire actors and actresses, they hire all the other staff, they produce a film, then they move on. The way that the auteurs work is that they probably write the film themselves. They spend a few years rolling the ideas around in their head. They start to imagine who they're going to cast in certain roles. Then they have to go find funding. And if they find it, it gets made. And if they don't, maybe it sits and waits or it never gets made at all. So the Hollywood system is completely mercenary. It's an ephemeral organization. It's like a political campaign. All these people get together for a short amount of time, and then when it's over, maybe they never meet again. But people like this, on the other hand, if they do make another film, then all those same people come back, or at least half of them do. So it's just different. It doesn't tell you everything about somebody, but I think that does tell you something important about their character. Some of his long-term collaborators, at least on the actor side, would be Bill Murray, and the Bill Murray whose career he helped to actually rejuvenate. He didn't do all the work on that, but he did a good portion of it. And then also the Wilson brothers, Owen and Luke. You may have seen them. So what kind of films does he actually make? He makes films that are this strange mix of whimsy and realism. They are usually at least partially sentimental, but they do contain some emotional sincerity. They have an extreme attention to detail. But there's also violence in every one of his films. So it's these conflicting things which end up making very interesting work. I think all of his films are good. They're all at least good. I would rather see the worst film that he's ever made than the best big budget Hollywood studio product for any given year. That's easy for me. He makes two kinds of films. The first kind are they're dramas, but they're mundane and they're domestic, essentially. They'll take place in a hotel off the interstate or school or home, something like that, something low-key. And then the film is the interaction of all the characters who occupy those domestic spaces. The other kind of film that he makes, he takes some kind of exotic or historical thing that we're not too close to personally, and then he embellishes it to an insane degree, adds tons and tons of fantasy components. So that's what we're looking at with this film. The Grand Budapest Hotel. So it looks like a historical film. It's got the name Budapest in the title, and that's the capital city of Hungary. So it's evoking a Central or Eastern European association just with the name, but it's not set in Hungary. It's not set anywhere. It's a mix of irreconcilable traits and characteristics. So first off, when the film starts, I think there's a title card that tells us that the action is taking place at the edge of the European continent. That tells us that we're talking about the far eastern edge of the European continent. So that's telling us that we're in Romania, Bulgaria, somewhere like that along the Black Sea, right? That's what I would think. In fact, the film was filmed in Germany, so it is filmed in Central Europe. Some of the background scenes in the film are clearly German culture, but it's also clear that they are not the dominant ethnic group, or at least they're not the overwhelming ethnic group. So what we're looking at is something more like Bohemia, the Czech Republic, maybe even Yugoslavia, maybe Hungary itself. I don't know. Something where there are Germans there, but it's not Germany. So the film is about a murder mystery, a little bit of a love story, some action scenes. There's not a whole, and then there's, I think, 2 frame stories, one frame story and then another one around it, maybe even a third. So the plot is not so much important. In fact, part of the plot is even revealed a third of the way into the film, and then the characters in the film still don't know about it. So anyhow, the plot's not that much important. This is mainly a way for the director to show a bunch of beautiful images and evoke some senses that you may have of an interesting time and place in history, which is the interwar Central Europe. What I thought I would do to describe this film, first off, let me say that when I saw this film back in 2014, I liked it very much. I watched it again recently, and I still liked it, but it made me very uncomfortable, and that's why I decided to do this review. It made me very uncomfortable because this is probably the most anti-nationalist film that I've ever seen. It's anti-nationalist because the characters who are cast in this film come from all over Western Europe and America. Everyone is speaking all of the actors are speaking English in their own accent. So you'll have someone like Edward Norton, who has a very bland, standard, normal American accent, and he will be speaking English next to Ralph Fiennes. Ralph Fiennes, who has, at least in the film, a very strong British accent. And another character is Irish, so she is speaking English with a very strong Irish accent. None of these ethnic differences are mentioned in the film. Everyone is assumed to be speaking the same language. We don't know what language it actually is. It almost assuredly isn't English. So the fact that everyone's nationality, the only Central or Eastern Europeans in the film that I'm aware of are the extras, and they're Germans. People who were living in the area in Germany. So even though in the interwar period, basically all of the people, if this were a historical work, all of the people in the film would be defined by their ethnic and religious character, and their relationships with each other would be highly influenced by that. None of that's covered. The film is only basically about class. It's only about money. So by pushing the economic cleavage to the front and leaving the ethnic stuff completely confused, that's anti-nationalist by itself. F. Murray Abraham, whom you may know from Amadeus, he played Salieri. He's in this film. He's playing, I believe it's an Arab, which he is an Assyrian, I think, so that's pretty close. He's probably the closest in the film to be playing someone that he actually is close to, historically, genetically, physically, etc. However, the younger version of his character is played by a Peruvian. So a Peruvian playing an Arab. Basically, the whole film's kind of like that. What I thought I would do is go through the different classes, social classes, professions, occupations that appear in the film and tell you whether they fall on the side of the good guys or the bad guys. The good guys involve immigrants, refugees, the service industry, if they're commercial. So the people working, the whole film is about a gigantic luxury hotel and the people who work there. So the people who work in this gigantic luxury hotel catering to the super rich, those are the good guys. New money are good. Professionals, like a police inspector, a lawyer, those are good guys. Orphans. Criminals, in fact, criminals sentenced to long prison terms, those are good guys. And monastics, renunciates, monks. Writers and artists are in an intermediate category where it's not, they don't pass judgment on them specifically, they're kind of in the middle. And I think that's just a little bit of sheepishness on the part of the director and the writers because they're talking about themselves, and they're certainly not going to put themselves in the bad class, but they would be kind of embarrassed to put themselves in the good class. The bad guys in the film are nobility and old money. So you can just go ahead and extend that to monarchism, right? The bad guys include the loyal servants of the nobility who are not commercial. They have one master and they serve that master loyally, so they're bad. And the military. There are two militaries that we see in the course of the film. One would be analogous to the military of the Czech area, and they beat up the main characters. The main characters are saved from being beaten up by them by a professional, the police inspector. Later on, we see this sort of Nazi, German, fascist military, and they're the bad guys too. Fascist, the slur fascist is also used, I think, 2 or 3 times in the film, so we know they're definitely bad guys. So what we see with this film, okay, let me back up again. The main characters at one point, when a war is about to break out between basically the Germany surrogate in the film and the Czech Republic surrogate in the film, or the Czech group in the film, a war is about to break out. The people who work at the hotel have to figure out what they're going to do. The main characters decide that they will liquidate some of their assets, they will move to the French Riviera, and they will spend all of their money on whores and whiskey. And hopefully their money will last until the war is over, and then they can go back home and go back to working in the luxury hotel serving rich people. So there's never any idea that there is loyalty to a state, to a nation, to anyone. We're all out for ourselves, and our goal is to excel in terms of our professional responsibilities, but other than that, just be a hedonist. This is very much in line with where we're at today in our Western liberal democratic tradition. No one respects service. No one expects service. You are expected to be in it for yourself, for monetary gain and hedonism. And if you're not in it for those things, then you're either an idiot or you're a fascist. So the worldview behind this film is totally in line with where we're at today. So in that sense, it's a very conservative film. Not conservative in the traditional sense, but conservative in this is a very safe moral judgment here. Nazis are the bad guys. People who are out in it for themselves to make money and experiencing worldly pleasures as much as possible are the good guys. That's not very interesting. So I guess my harsh judgment and my uncomfortable feeling I had after watching the film was from that ethical standpoint that the film takes, but then also the complete mishmash of anything having to do with nation, state, country, any of that. How can you have a state worth defending, I guess, if every person in it is from a different nationality and none of that is even relevant? It's very strange, very strange. All that notwithstanding, if you haven't seen this film, I would suggest that you see it. It's good. It's just a shame that we've got really smart, talented people who know how to make good art, and they're not on our side. Wes Anderson himself is a disgusting internationalist. He was born in Texas, married some sort of Persian or Near Easterner, I'm not sure which. Not that I have anything against Persians or Near Easterners, but he's got to find someone from halfway across the planet to satisfy himself. That's probably really not necessary. And as far as I know, now he lives in Paris. So that's not good, and that probably informs the relationship between two of the main characters in this film is between the Arab and an Arab boy and an Irish girl. That's actually the flip side, I think, of Wes Anderson and his wife in real life. She's a Near Easterner. He's a very fair-skinned, red-headed white guy. So that's just the inverse. And okay, fine, whatever. Anyhow, people, like Pareto said, people are going to promote theories that validate their worldviews, and I think there's quite a bit of that going on here. Thank you for your time.